We learned in the previous module how to create simple files using Nano. But what if we simply want to open a file? We want to read the output of a file, but we don't want to open it up for editing. We essentially just want to read the output. In a read-only mode, we don't want to be in any sort of editor. Well, we can do that using another command called cat. So cat is going to concatenate a file. It's going to string together the characters of a file, and we can practice here on some files I've created, Apple 1, Apple 2, and Test 3. So if I cat Apple 1, you'll see the output of the file. Now, just so you're getting a really good understanding of what's happening here, we can open up the file in Nano, which is what I showed you to do previously using Nano Apple 1. Here you can see the contents, which says Apple. And I will add some information down here, not in orange, and I'll write that information out with Control O and Enter, and then I'll exit Nano with Control X. Now I can concatenate Apple 1 again, and you can see the output, including my most recent changes, Apple and not an orange. Again, concatenating files, it's very simple. Here I have concatenated the Apple 2 file, and I can concatenate Test 3 in a similar fashion. So cat is going to come in handy when you just need to read the output of a file. You don't need to edit or potentially edit it. You just want to see it. You want to read it. You want to get the output printed to your screen. In that case, you use concatenate rather than Nano. There's no reason to use Nano unless you're wanting to make changes. And in some cases, it can be a lot easier and safer for you to use concatenate so you don't accidentally make any changes, even though you really shouldn't be able to in Nano. It's going to ask you if you want to write out your changes and whatnot. But often working on a server, you're dealing with very sensitive information, sensitive files, and so concatenate can sometimes be a safer option. Now, I'd like to share with you a few additional tips for using the shell, using the command line to your advantage. And the first tip I want to show you is how to use the tab key. So say I want to concatenate a file, let's say test 3, but let's pretend that the file name is rather long and cumbersome. So, I don't want to have to type out a very long and cumbersome file name. Instead, I can simply type T and then hit the tab key. And automatically, the file name will be populated using the tab key. And then I can hit enter and I've concatenated that file. Let's try that for Apple 1 and Apple 2. Cat A and then hit the tab key. Notice that tab is going to stop now at the end of Apple. And it does that obviously because we have Apple 1 and Apple 2, and the system has no way of knowing which file it is that we want to open. So we specify whichever one we want to open and then hit enter, and in fact, it opens. So tab can really help you if, for example, you have a really long file name and yes, okay. So you can create a file like this with a very long name, but please do not. In a server environment, we try and keep things very simple and very short, very concise and to the point. However, if you're dealing with an organization that has multiple users using this server, especially if it's a file server, you are often going to get people who are going to create very long file and directory names. And tab is much easier than typing all of this by hand. You're more prone to errors and it takes a lot longer. So I just typed all of that out by hand, but really all I needed to do was type a Y and then hit the tab key, and it's automatically populated for me. And there are no competing names, no other files begin with Y, and so the server's smart and it knows exactly what file I want to concatenate. Now, some other helpful tips in the shell. You can use 2 ampersands. These are the and symbols, or the and sign. You can use 2 ampersands to run 2 commands in succession from one command line. So for example, say that I want to concatenate Apple 1 and I want to concatenate Apple 2. Now I can achieve this with cat Apple 1 ampersand ampersand cat Apple 2. What's going to happen is the first command is going to be run first, and then the command after the ampersands will be run immediately after the first command has run. So here you can see no pause, no break from one command line. I've run cat Apple 1 and cat Apple 2, and they have worked back to back. So again, you could do cat Apple 1 like this, and then cat Apple 2 like so. Or if you want them to run back to back and without interruption, you could run it like so. Now you also have command history. This is so powerful and cool. If you hit the up arrow and then hit it again, and then hit it again and again, you will be able to see that the command line is going to have a memory of the commands you've recently run, and you can scroll through them using the up arrow key and the down arrow key. So I don't have to retype things every time I want to make a little change, or if I want to run that command again. I can just use arrow up and arrow down. Now what I'm going to do is concatenate Apple 1, and then I'll concatenate Apple 2, and then I will open Nano and specify a new file being the new file name. So in doing that, you didn't even see the output because it concatenated so very quickly, but it did in fact run those. It opened Nano, and now I can exit out like so. Okay, so it concatenated those files, and then it opened Nano, but there's no reason realistically you would do that because you wouldn't be able to see the output of those concatenated files back to back like that. But that's showing you how to use the ampersands to run commands back to back. Now, finally, this is very important, especially if you're new to this kind of environment. You have to understand that spaces are not very server friendly. If you would like to, you can create a file that has a space in the name, but you'll have to put quotes around it if that's something that you want to do. So that's what I've done here. I'll use Control-O to write out the changes. And now I can use Control-X and LS, and you can see the file new file. If I try to concatenate new file, which has a space in the name, I won't be able to do it because the space has interrupted the command line, and it's no longer looking for a file called new space file. It's looking simply for new, and then it's getting dropped off, and it's not able to find the file new. However, we can use quotes yet again in order to concatenate that file. Or we can concatenate that file using a backslash and a space. A backslash and a space, those two characters together are going to equal a space itself. You may be familiar with %20 if you've done any HTML editing and how you can use %20. That is not going to work here on your CentOS 7 system, but a backslash and then a space will accomplish the same thing. So those are some tips for getting around, for using the shell more effectively. And the best thing you can do is to practice all of this until it becomes second nature. You're not going to break your server, I don't think. So if you're just playing around in your home directory, you're not going to break your system. Go ahead and have some fun. Create some files, directories, remove them, try things. It's a great way to learn. And of course, if you have any questions, please post in the discussion board so we can all learn together as a community. If for any reason you don't want your questions out there on the discussion board, you can send me a private message here on Udemy, and I'll be happy to answer those private messages as well. But I strongly recommend if you have any questions, you post them to the discussion board so future students can learn from whatever it is you're desiring to learn at this time.